Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful time at networking. We're going to hop right into this because we have such an incredible topic that we want to unpack here today.
We're going to hop right into this because we have
Hang
such
on.
an incredible topic that we
Y'all hearing an echo here?
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to hop right into this because we have such an incredible topic that y'all hearing an echo here?
Hang on one sec. All right, there we go. It's all cleared. My bad, everybody. Live event. There we go. Okay, well, welcome to the stage here, Kathy DeFrancesco, Vice President of Sales at Snugs. Kathy, if you could wave to everybody. Kathy, can you hear okay? Stephen Musgrave with Right Sleeve, and Sarah White with Fairwear. I encourage you to go check out their bios because they have there's a reason why they're all taking the stage on this particular topic. So we're switching gears a little bit as we move from all of our talk about merchandise to talk about leading teams and also working together as teams. And our topic today, of course, is emotional intelligence, probably one of the most important topics that we could have here today as we head into 2022, because as we all know, it's been an incredible couple of years. But before we go further, let's define what emotional intelligence is so we're all on the same page. So the folks that coined this word, John Mayer and Pierre Solovey, many years ago, coined the term emotional intelligence to mean the ability to perceive your own and others' emotions, to understand the signals that emotions send about relationships, and to manage your own and others' emotions. But Stephen, you get the credit for bringing this topic to the stage. So I want to start with you. How would you in your role define this? And I know since you're the one that brought it up, you were it made you think a little clearer about the topic, and maybe did that bring a new definition to mind to you?
I don't think my definition, like the simple definition of emotional intelligence, would be different than what you just said, but I've definitely done a lot more thinking about why and how it should factor into what I'm doing as a leader at our company.
Yeah. You forwarded me a book and a word, Sonder, which means the realization that everyone is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, sort of populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. So we see our colleagues and our team through the lens of work first and life second. Why was that particular passage important to you? How did it change how you viewed your team?
Well, I think, like you said, we do have a tendency to think you can come to work and leave your non-work stuff outside of work. But yeah, especially the last 2 years, we've all seen like work creep into our personal space a lot more.
Right.
And it's made kind of the lines between our work selves and our personal selves a lot blurrier, which is also, I think, emphasized our personal selves coming into work a little bit more. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
the lines are just blurrier. So I think the days of thinking there's like an emotional mind and a rational mind, and you can park your emotional mind in the parking lot of your office and just go in and work all day without thinking of your feelings, are gone. So that idea of that realization that people around you have lives is infinitely complex as yours. Like, I know I have lots of things I want to do with the company I work at, and lots of personal dreams and goals and things I want to do with my life that don't relate to work, but like I'm working 8 hours a day, so work is going to impact them. All these sorts of things, and that idea of looking at all the people that work for me and realizing that they've got all those same things, and we're not. I don't have a bunch of goals, and these people are here working, trying to help me meet those goals. Like, we all have individual paths we're on, and trying to make those cross each other, I think is what I think about for emotional intelligence as a leader.
Yeah. I think before we lived in balance, and that meant partitioning life and work. And then after, especially through the pandemic, we are all aiming to live a more harmonious life, which means we have to be more vulnerable with each other. And we are being, because like you said, we're bringing our private lives in public. Sarah, how would you define emotional intelligence? Why is it important to you as a leader?
Yeah, I think I wanted to just, I guess the big thing is self-awareness for sure. But one thing I wanted to talk about just a little bit is, I think that, we've lived in this world where there's, you just spoke about how, you separate work and home, or your home life, and how I think for business owners, there can be, I mean, speaking of my own experience, a tension between caring for people and being stressed out about the bottom line. Yeah. So if someone's sick, or they're not feeling well, or they're stressed out, it's like your mind can go to, oh my goodness, get better. Don't be sick because we're too busy. And so, we're afraid we can't be afraid to just be there for people, to hear what's going on, to understand what's happening. Because if we do, it's going to open floodgates, and we're not therapists and all that kind of thing. But I think, now we're in a place where we have to understand that, to Stephen's point, individuals are complex and each one is different, and they all bring their own things. And we can do this with boundaries and with professionalism, to be there for people, to understand them and to support them in their growth, in life and in our companies.
Yeah. Kathy, what about you? How would you define it? You're in an interesting role where you became vice president of sales and you started building and recruiting a sales force, which requires a lot of balance with good tension, good stress, bad stress. How do you approach your role with a more emotionally intelligent attitude?
So we've lived in the last couple of years in a very different dynamic than we've ever used to. I mean, health has been a huge piece of it, working from home, working remote. How do we balance the two? I have staff that is remote, right? It's an outside sales team. And then we have staff that's internal sales support, inside sales, and customer service. To me, emotional intelligence, like Stephen and Sarah both have said, for me, it's practicing empathy. Yeah. Is the very first thing I think of when I think about emotional intelligence. I also look at a human being as a dynamic individual. Like everyone has said this earlier, we are not one-dimensional. We're not two-dimensional. We're made up of many facets, right? We're not just work. And I think Stephen had said this earlier, maybe it was in a other conversation, like we are so used to looking at our coworkers as workers first,
Yeah.
And that has changed significantly. Yeah. So that, to me, emotional intelligence is super important, because we need to practice empathy so that we can connect in a more dynamic way.
Yeah. And when the book Emotional Intelligence first burst on the scene about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, so a lot of it was misunderstood. So the author wrote a follow-up article in the Harvard Business Review, and he wrote that there are 3 different kinds of empathy, since you brought that up, that reside in different parts of our brain. There's cognitive empathy. I know how you think. There is emotional empathy. I know how you feel. And then there's empathetic concern. I care about you. So in the workplace, Sarah, what's the difference between I know how you feel versus I care about you?
Well, the part about, hopefully the 3 of them work together. I think that's the ideal. You kind of need all 3 pieces. I suppose an example of understanding how someone feels. So say somebody comes to me and says, I'm really stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. I can't keep up with my work. And so I could say, oh, I know how you feel. I totally understand. This is such a stressful job at times. I can relate to feeling stressed. So I'm able to understand perhaps what they're going through in part. And so I know how you're feeling. I could say, well, maybe you should take the afternoon off, or, here's a card, go get some tea. Versus how I care about you would be validating the feelings, etc. But then saying, okay, let's set aside some time. This would be really hard for you. I'm really sorry. It's not a nice place to be in. Let's unpack this together. Let's figure out what's going on. Like, what's contributing to this? Are there things outside work that are, causing your stress levels to increase? Has it been building over time? Let's work together. We're going to unpack this. We're going to figure it out. We're going to check in every week on this. We're going to see how we can, is it organization? Is it too much work? Do you need support from the team? We're going to figure this out together, and we're going to, take care of you, essentially. So it's digging in deeper than just saying, oh, I understand how you're feeling, take some time off. So it's really actually demonstrating that you're digging in to solve and help.
Yeah.
without telling people what to do. Like, well, when I'm stressed, I do this.
Right. Right. Good point. Great point. Before I move to the next question, Stephen or Kathy, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think as Sarah was talking, I thought about this, the big difference between I know how you feel and I care about you is doing something about how they feel, like trying to simply, whether it's a little thing or a lot. Sometimes people do just want to be heard, but you should always be ready to do some tough work and help somebody with the problems they're having.
Yeah. Kathy, after years of working with strategic accounts, in 2021, you took the role of VP of Sales at Snugs, and you've been building a sales team, I mentioned before. We must be careful not to cast the subject of emotional intelligence in a softer light, as if emotional intelligence is about just kindness or that it's an antithesis to growth in sales. So you mentioned something to me that I thought was very intriguing, that the competitive self and the compassionate self exists within each of us. And that if you understand empathy, your competitive self becomes stronger. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I live this every day. So I'll give you a good example. Let's say you're in a client situation, right? Or internal too, because I work with different departments all the time. If I understand and I make it intentional to understand the other, what their pain points are, or what their most important goal is, what matters to them the most. That's practicing emotional intelligence. It's not about feeling happy or feeling sad or, just the feels of it. I think people associate emotion with feelings. Naturally, it makes a lot of sense. But emotional intelligence is about connection, like I said earlier. So therefore, to me, being the competitive self is very ego-driven, right? What can I do to win? What can I do? How is this going to benefit me? Practicing emotional intelligence takes it away from just being about you, but being about the other. When you make it about the other, all of a sudden you're shifting that narrative and that focus, and that other person feels vested. They feel that, oh, I'm important. We want to work together. So building that alliance, your guiding post, instead of what's in it for me, your guiding post now becomes partnership, alliance, unity, common purpose, common goal, common mission, whether it's, hey, I want to have a profitable, healthy margin, or I want to be on the same page. We want to achieve these same things together. That really, you become so much more powerful. Your competitive self is so much stronger because it's based off of different values that includes the other. So that's how I connect the both together and why it needs to work together and how it works.
Yeah.
So
ultimately, sorry to interrupt. Ultimately, I'm here for your well-being. We're going to win, but I'm here for your well-being. According to Daniel Goldman, who wrote the book, he said emotional intelligence is not squishy. It's not about being nice, about being kind. And an example he provided is avoiding confrontation is poor emotional intelligence. So how do we imbue growth, drive, sales, competition with more emotional intelligence? Stephen, something you mentioned to me was you guys meet monthly to go over sales goals and growth and things like that. And I thought it was an interesting insight into, as we looked at being more emotionally intelligent, that you do that in large part to celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, we have a weekly meeting every Monday morning at 9:30 to kind of set the vibe for the whole week. But I'm a very numbers focused person, in addition to thinking a lot about this emotional intelligence topic. But I mean, we share the numbers to let everybody know at the company how we're doing and when we're doing well, to put them at ease. And if we're not doing as well as we'd like, to let them know that they need to be on their toes a little bit more. But we make space in that meeting every week for individual people to talk about successes they had last week or failures or whatever, something cool or interesting that happened to them the week before, and let them tell the story themselves to help connect the rest of the sales team to these individual stories, but give people some space to be heard. Every single one of these things we do has like a business case reason we're doing it.
Right.
So there's kind of like deeper emotional connection reason, and like making the team feel more connected.
Yeah. I like how you and Sarah both have mentioned that to me, that, not everything has to have a business case. Like, we don't have to be emotionally intelligent human beings that have a business case. One of the things I love about the new analytics that we just released, that everybody's been crazy about with the new on the platform, is that it allows a lot of self-management. Allows for people to see kind of where they're at. Giving transparency is a big part of it, because we're all smart people. And we're also busy. So a lot of it is that. In the field of neuroeconomics, they talk about how there's a natural human inclination to empathy, but the thing that dampens our natural inclination is stress. And we all know this is a very high stress business. But one professor said that there's this misnomer that stress is bad, too much stress is bad, but also too little stress is bad. Kathy, what are your thoughts about that? As I say, too little stress is bad. Why is it important to distinguish between the two? And how do you do that in your practice?
I have a different narrative about this that's different from Paul Zach's thought. I mean, I still think stress is a negative word.
Okay.
I'd like to replace that word with pressure, maybe, All right. Sense of urgency, which can be stressful. So I think it's looking at how we respond to the sense of urgency, to the pressure, to meeting goals, hitting deadlines, whatever the pressure is. We need that, because challenges is the impetus for growth, period. So we can't run away from challenges and from growth, but how we respond to pressure can be stressful, or it can be focused, so.
Yeah. Be sure you throw questions in the chat. We'd love to hear your questions as well, what you're struggling with, how they're doing things practically to help mitigate some of these challenges. So we'd love to hear from you. Sarah, I think sometimes as businesses, we're very well-intentioned about a focus on culture, but in some cases, a hyper focus on culture almost backfires. And in order to build a more harmonious culture, we tend to hire people who think like us, act like us, and inadvertently sort of look like us. But something we should all embrace more is that you mentioned to me that you're not looking for a cultural fit, you're looking for cultural contribution. I thought that was a brilliant, emotionally intelligent way to look at things. Can you explain what you mean?
No. Sure. That's funny. Well, I think that we're conditioned for sameness. There are forces that, societal, that we're conditioned to fit in and to look for people like ourselves. That's another rabbit hole. But it does take emotional intelligence, and it takes some stretching and challenging of those sort of biases, unconscious and conscious, to create a diverse team. And I don't think work is family. I think it's more like a team, like sports, like you got each other's back and you play hard and you support each other and you're working towards the same goal. And then, you go home. So I think having, if we want these like strong, diverse teams, we have to hire differently, but we also have to create environments where different people will feel welcomed. So it's not enough to just hire different people and then say like, okay, we're doing pizza and beer now. Like there has to be a stretch of our comfort levels. And, when we surround, people don't have to fit in. We don't have to have everything in common to bond and to have a team. We can't all be different. And I think, we don't have to like all the same music and all the things. So when we surround ourselves with different people, for me, it's sort of like it keeps us in check. It reminds us not to make assumptions about people and, to always really acknowledge and respect difference. And it means learning about others and not trying unconsciously to compare to find something in common so you can feel okay about it. So, we compare as a way to understand, which is okay, as long as the intent is not to kind of change somebody to be more like you. So some examples of that would be like, so Hanukkah is Jewish Christmas, right? You don't like olives or pizza. How can you not like that? They're the best, and gee, it's really hot in here. I'm going to turn the heat down. Like it's that self-awareness, like that willingness and stretching to understand someone and then accept that you might not get it all or understand it all, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And then we have these, like, you can look at the research and it's like there's diverse teams are more profitable and all that thing. But anyway, I'll stop.
Yeah. On another note, Kirby Hussman asked the question, if emotional intelligence means having tough conversations, how has this panel tackled those tough conversations head on? Kathy, let me start with you, because I know you've been in a fast building and rebuilding sales team. How have you tackled tough conversations? What does it mean to bring emotional intelligence into those kinds of conversations?
First and foremost, you have to listen intently and have an open mind and not go into a conversation with an agenda. Because if you go into a conversation with an agenda that you know it's going to be a difficult conversation, you immediately set the tone for, I need to win, I need to be right. Having a difficult conversation is actually the ultimate expression of compassion, because it's just like you wouldn't let your friend walk out the door wearing their shirt backwards or inside it out or something. I'm just using a really simple example. So having a difficult conversation is usually to help the other. Yeah. And also to bridging differences or coming to the table and being okay with having a disagreement. But it shows a tremendous amount of respect when you can have a difficult conversation, regardless of what the topic is. It shows it also expresses investment in the other. Because if I didn't care, you didn't care, I wouldn't even bother.
Yeah, that's a very important point that you brought up before, is that one, we're always thinking of emotional intelligence almost on a defensive as a leader, like how am I going to respond in this particular situation? But what each of you shared with me offline was one of the most proactive, emotionally intelligent things we can do as leaders is invest in our team. Kathy, you said it this way: ping pong and pizza are not it. What folks need, they need structure and strategy, but what they crave the most, they thrive development. And that's what we were speaking specifically about Gen Z. Can you guys speak to that? How are you investing in your team and emotionally? How are you investing in your team proactively, which is a reflection of emotional intelligence? Kathy?
So I have standing one-on-ones with my key senior positions and also with just other staff too. A lot of the development that we work on that spills over to high productivity in the workplace is their ability to cope. It's been stressful these last couple of years, right? Yeah. So a lot of people were not prepared and didn't have the right coping skills to respond to any of it. So their personal lives and all the pressure outside of work was spilling into performance. So it was important for me to work with individuals who wanted to figure out how to do this, and the result, it was transformative. I mean, incredible transformation of people who are now empowered. They self-manage. They know exactly how to respond and handle every situation, particularly themselves. I mean, that is education that you pay thousands of dollars for at therapy, right?
Right.
And I'm not a therapist. I just want to put that out there. I think, Sarah, you had said it earlier, like, we're not trained therapists. So we have to be really careful with how far we take those coaching and mentoring sessions too. So it takes practice for sure.
Yeah.
But it's an investment.
Yeah. Investment. I like that word. Stephen, how about you? How do you proactively invest in folks?
I mean, we do a lot of this kind of, I think we do one-on-one meetings every week with our team. I do it with our senior leadership team. They do it with all their direct reports, where we talk about numbers, and we're going to use the new dashboard and analytics stuff in Common SKU a ton. I'm very excited about it. But we also make sure that there's taking time to connect personally, but also just talk about how things are going and kind of work on some of these coping skills like Kathy just talked about. We do some bigger picture stuff as well. I'm very, very focused on goal setting, like sales goal numbers setting and driving towards it constantly. Talk about it all the time. But we're having our team this year write goals, like work goals, growth goals that aren't related to the numbers, even work in their personal goals. Like I had this series of questions. One of them is like, do you want to buy a house? What does that look like? How much money do you need to make? Like, not just your feelings, but like how all this stuff in your personal life feeds into what you're trying to accomplish at work, and have them put these goals in writing and kind of gear what they're doing towards that, like their goal, not the goal.
I love that. That's very well whole being attitude. Sarah, how about you? How you share us an example of a way that you invest in your team?
So we're, I think it's the last 2 years have been, have certainly shone a light on the need to be more focused on the individual. We do, we do one-on-one meetings, we do small team meetings within teams, and there's also a lot of informal, for me, checking in with folks to see how they're doing. I don't feel like part of it is informal to me, and I think that's okay. And I think that it's
Go ahead, Sarah. Something I think you just said, though, I think is powerful, is that you said it's informal. A lot of it's informal. That's a natural inclination that you have to check in on folks. It doesn't have to be on the schedule. And it's almost more important that it's not, because it just fits into that rhythm. I'm sort of asking you to look at as a fish in water to describe the water you're in, because that's the kind of environment you've been trying to build at Fairware empathetically from the get-go.
Right. Say that again. Sorry?
You just have been working hard at building such an empathetic environment from the beginning. It's such a natural part of the way that you and your team work. But it also sounds like you have a structured way of checking in with folks and making sure they're doing okay too.
Yeah, I mean, like Stephen, we're, Denise leads the sales team, is very focused on numbers and goals, very much like you. And there's, I think our environment, what I hope is that our environment is one. I mean, we did just do a staff survey, and what we know is that majority of people find the environment to be open, supportive, teamwork. They can bring themselves to work. So I guess a part of it, like a little bit, I'm like, oh, what do we do? But like part of it is, I think, to your point, which is creating the environment where people feel that they can bring issues, they can talk about what they need to, if they have an issue or a challenge, that they can bring it to us. That's the environment versus, a more formal kind of system of, checking or coaching. I'd love to have, what we look forward to is like, I'd look forward to having that sort of time to be able to spend more time and dedicate more time to doing that more kind of one-on-one coaching with folks. Yeah.
I love the distinction you just made between incidents that happen versus environment. And we can all spend, and I think that if anything, the pandemic all taught us to focus more on the environments that we're creating, to make sure those are places that are fruitful, where folks feel safe. But that's a big difference, I think. CJ asked, how many difficult conversations do we think take place per year? I mean, is it just now such a normal part of the way we do business, Kathy?
Oh, we have difficult conversations all the time. I feel like I have them every day. But it's about not being fearful of reaction or consequence, as long as your intention is to be fair, or, hey, I'm bringing this to the table because I'm thinking about how this impacts you.
Yeah.
And when you change that narrative to how it impacts the other, it's an unbreakable bond. To me, it's how I have forged strong relationships, and in sales, especially, where it's important to have relationships with everybody, especially clients, or even internal. I think internal relationships are just as important, whether it's staff or co-departments. But difficult conversations is something that everyone should be comfortable and get good at, because it shows respect to the other.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Kathy, also we are such an intricate network that's very connected from suppliers and distributors. So that understanding, compassion, and empathy extends to our supplier partners, distributors, but our colleagues too. Stephen, since you brought this topic up, have you had more insight into this as a leader? And we'll let you close with us.
I think just thinking more intentionally about a lot of this stuff and the kind of ripple effect that this can have through how you carry yourself as a leader and how the company operates. Like the last 5 minutes have been talking about like creating an environment where the way we've been talking about it is creating an environment of psychological safety.
Yeah.
Where people feel like a tough conversation is easier. People feel that they can bring something up when it's not working, and people aren't scared of getting in trouble, and they just feel safe. And that's the kind of stuff that makes your company get better at what you do and grow.
Yeah.
And, the last like month or so since we've been talking about this has really made me just connect a lot of dots that I wasn't connecting before on the bigger picture of how this all fits in.
Yeah. Sarah, let me let you have the last word, actually, and we'll close this out. How would you encourage other leaders to lean into this emotional intelligence more in 2022?
Well, I just beat Steven, so that's good. My numbers are up. I got the last word. I think for me, I'm a work in progress. Like I know the work I need to do. So it's being more self-aware. It's listening more. It's talking less. It's, managing one's own behaviors, understanding, am I a reactive person? Am I a not talk person? Like, what kind of person am I? And how do I manage those behaviors to better serve others and to be there for others? Strong boundaries. I mean, listen more, talk less.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love just that self-analysis, understand where you are and where your weaknesses as a leader is in terms. Thank you, Kathy, Stephen, Sarah. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I know this was a huge topic that we had to unpack in a very short amount of time, but I can't tell you how important it is for us to stop and have that conversation, particularly as we head into 2022. So thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
See you guys soon.